It is. It's about a stillness and a deep respect.
The term natural nest beekeeping is a term that Joy and I use to describe the way in which we keep bees. And so natural nest beekeeping is a collection of qualities of the hive as well as practices of the beekeeper. So for us, natural nest beekeeping, of course, is predicated on a hive made of natural materials. So for us, natural nest beekeeping means no plastics in the hive, no artificial paints used on the hive, and no unnecessary modern day contraptions or gadgetry being used on the entrances or on the interior of the hive. So for us, a natural nest beehive consists of wood and wax, and as well as a minimal amount of fasteners to hold it all together. So for us, a natural nest beehive means no glue, and for us to go without paint and without glue and things like that means utilizing some good materials in the construction of that hive. And for us, that means using wood from the cypress family. So cedar, redwood, cypress, these woods all have something in common, which is that their growth form results in a closed cell pattern where the individual cells of the wood growth are intact and then vacated by the contents of the cell as they die, and it results in small little packets of air. And so that results in something analogous to like bubble wrap, where literally the wood with all of the enclosed packets of air becomes insulative. So for us, cypress family wood is far superior because it's warm. It actually has R value. But aside from just having insulative qualities, it also is extremely hydrophobic. Because the cells of the wood are intact and enclosed, they cannot absorb water. So that is of paramount importance, because a colony is like you and I, and they're breathing. And when a colony breathes, when it expires, when it breathes out, it's expiring respiratory gases, just like you and I. And those respiratory gases are full of water, and that water goes out and it condenses on the interior surfaces of the hive. If that wood is porous, if that wood is permeable, then that water is absorbed into the wood. And all of that water accumulates in the interior portion of the wood through the winter. Because when the bees are clustered in the wintertime, they're only actively moderating the climate of the area where the cluster is proper. But all of the other portions of the hive are close to ambient temperatures. And because of that, you get condensation and you get absorption of that water. All that water that absorbs into the hive results because when water is present, it can conduct heat. So wet steals heat away from the bees. All of that moisture will have to be re-evaporated back out of the hive each spring. And that is an onerous task for bees that dramatically hampers their growth rates in the springtime when the weather's still inclement. So for us, cypress family woods are an absolute imperative for natural beekeeping, and pine is just simply unsuitable. When you can have wood that is unfinished, then it encourages the bees in the deposition of propolis. And so when the bees coat all the interior surfaces with propolis, it seals all of the hive up tight, but it also makes the wood extremely water repellent. The bees put a fine coating of propolis across the surface of everything. In all surfaces inside the hive are coated in propolis, and by doing so, it prevents the growth of bacteria and fungi. So no molds and no place for pathogenic fungi and bacteria to harbor in the hive. Here is this large bead of propolis from the sealing of that gap between the two boxes. This propolis is something that we harvest in the summer, and that's why we're adamant about there not being any artificial substances associated with the exterior coating of the hive, or you would have the propensity of getting wax of paint chips into your propolis, which would be unsuitable for the making of medicine.
This has a little bit sticky because it has so much propolis in it.
Another of the important components of natural nest beekeeping is what we call natural queen rearing. So for us, the only appropriate way for a queen to be reared is in the hive by her sisters, by the bees from that colony, maintaining the genetic relatedness and the continuity of the hive wisdom down through the ages. We annually raise all of our new colonies by preparing starter colonies from portions of an existing colony moved off to their own hive stand, and where we leave the bees to their own devices in raising a new queen, as opposed to being responsible for the artificial transfer of worker eggs into an artificial queen cup, and then the rearing of those queens in a cell builder, and then the transfer of that cell back into a queenless nucleus colony of bees that are unrelated to the queen. For us, it's very important that whole process be undertaken by the bees within the hive. So that is another of the backbone of the tenets of natural beekeeping. Oh, there she is. She's right there. Do you see her? I can gently remove combs from a beehive when they're on a frame. Having that ability to move frames around is a really important part of our management practices. And I'm not breaking any of the combs. I'm not disturbing the architecture of the combs, and I'm really not even disturbing the bees. As you see, they're quite patient with me even here on a relatively cool end of summer day. By having the ability to move combs, it gives us the opportunity to have more tools in our tool belt for caring for colonies that are, say, below average in how well they prepared for winter. The other thing that movable frames allows us to do is to easily and non-destructively make up starter colonies by removing combs from a hive. So when we are in swarm season and colonies are robust and swelling in preparation to swarm, we can make up what's called an artificial swarm or a divide, where we remove all of the essential components from a colony and transfer them into their own cavity. And by doing so, we can set up the production of a new colony in a non-destructive fashion. When you can remove combs and extract the honey out of them and then not destroy the comb, you are minimizing the amount of resources that the bees have to invest in utilizing that comb again and in producing honey. And that is really like one of the great inventions of modern beekeeping. By being able to extract honey and conserve the comb and give it back to the bees, it allows the bees to be highly efficient. I'm motivated as a beekeeper to assist humanity in getting this high quality food out into our culture. So not utilizing a movable frame hive is limiting the ability to share a surplus with people. It just means less can be gained from interacting with the bees. One of the motivations for Joy and I as beekeepers is that it's our belief that this world needs good food. Humans need good food, and everywhere I look, I feel like I see humans eating food that is of inferior quality, and that affects us. It affects our vibration, our energy, our health, and honey is one of the best foods for humanity. And to be able to interact with the bees in a non-destructive fashion and share in the mana that they produce and be able to share that with other people is why I want to be a farmer. to be part of producing high quality food for humanity. It's very clear that we need good food, and the bees produce some of the best food for our stomach, for our bodies, for our spirits. As a beekeeper in Oregon, you know, this is one of the hardest regions of the country to produce surplus honey crops, but also a place where we produce some of the most pristine and highest quality honeys in the nation. So while we lack in quantity of honey produced, certainly the quality and the purity of the product produced here is unparalleled, and that's why I prefer to keep bees in this kind of an environment as opposed to the heartland, where the big crops of honey are produced in this nation off of industrial agriculture, places where bees are being forced to tend fields that are, laden with chemical residues and fertilizers and lacking the diversity of wild forage and wild pollen sources, which are imperative to the bees' health as well. This spot we're here on now is a really great place to demonstrate the regenerative capabilities of bees. This spot, prior to us bringing bees in, lacked any topsoil at all. It's another location here. This was all an old gold mine, and the soil types are such that plants don't readily grow on them. And by keeping bees on this flat now over a decade, they have stimulated the soil development and the growth of all this grass. And you can see where I'm standing here, the soil is much, much thicker than, for instance, out in the middle. And that is directly due to the presence of colonies being placed in this location year in, year out.
So beautiful. They're so beautiful. Oh, thank you for coming. Thank you so much. So grateful.